Right now, not last year, not in some future forecast, right now, purchasing managers at three of the largest grocery distributors in the United States are quietly reducing reorder quantities on 11 specific pantry categories. Not because demand dropped, because supply is tightening faster than the public pricing data shows. And the number one item on this list? It's something you almost certainly bought within the last 30 days and paid significantly more for than you realize. That's number one. We'll get there. Here's what's happening at the macro level and why this matters to your family specifically. Since January 2026, the USDA has recorded grocery inflation running at 4.2% annually. But that average masks something critical. Within the pantry staples category, select items are experiencing price spikes between 18% and 34% in under 6 months. That's not inflation. That's a shelf event. Three converging forces are driving this. New import tariff structures affecting agricultural commodities, 2 consecutive seasons of below-average yields in key growing regions, and a post-pandemic distribution model that prioritizes velocity over depth, meaning stores are carrying less buffer stock than they did 5 years ago. What that means practically, the window between available and affordable and limited and expensive is shorter than it's ever been in the modern grocery era. So here are 11 specific pantry foods, each chosen for a concrete, documentable reason, that smart families are already pulling from shelves before June. And the closer we get to number one, the harder this list gets to sit with. Number 11, canned tomatoes. Most people treat canned tomatoes like a background ingredient. Here's why that assumption is quietly costing families real money. According to USDA commodity tracking, processing tomato yields in California, which supplies over 95% of the U.S. canned tomato market, dropped 11% last harvest season due to heat stress during the flowering cycle. That shortfall doesn't appear on shelves immediately. It appears 8 to 14 months later, when processors have worked through existing reserves. We're now inside that window. The delayed reveal: canned tomatoes aren't just a convenience product. They're one of the most nutrient-dense, long-shelf items available, with lycopene content that actually increases through the canning process, according to research published in the Journal of Food Science. They earned this spot because they sit at the intersection of nutritional value, culinary flexibility, and an incoming supply squeeze most shoppers won't notice until prices jump. Buy whole canned tomatoes over diced or crushed. They maintain structural integrity longer and are processed at higher quality thresholds. Store in a cool, dark pantry below 70 degrees. A case of 24 cans runs under $8 at current pricing and represents roughly 4 to 6 months of rotation stock. Hold this one in mind. At number 7, it connects to something about supply chains that most grocery channels will never say directly. There's a price format anomaly happening in the rice aisle right now that almost nobody is talking about. Single-pound bags are holding their price point relatively stable, but the 25-pound bulk format, the one that actually makes economic sense for pantry building, has increased in average retail price by 22% since October 2025. That gap is not accidental. It reflects a deliberate SKU strategy by retailers managing tightening wholesale costs without triggering headline inflation alarm at the per-pound level. White rice stores for 25 to 30 years in sealed, oxygen-removed conditions, according to FEMA emergency preparedness guidelines, making it arguably the highest caloric value per dollar per decade item in existence. At current pricing, a 25-pound bag delivers approximately 41,000 calories for under 22s. That's $0.05 per calorie. Buy the 25-pound format immediately. Transfer to food-grade 5-gallon buckets with Gamma Seal lids and oxygen absorbers. Label with purchase date. Rotate annually. Brands like Mahatma or Producer's Rice Mill are widely available and consistently rated for quality. The next one involves a price gap between its generic and branded versions that's genuinely hard to justify once you understand what's actually in both. Here's a contradiction that will change how you think about your protein budget. A pound of dried lentils delivers 26 grams of protein. A pound of ground beef delivers 38 grams, but the lentils cost roughly 85% less. Store for 10 plus years sealed, require no refrigeration, and according to a Harvard School of Public Health study, are associated with a 22% reduction in cardiovascular disease risk with regular consumption. And yet the dried lentil shelf at most grocery stores still gets treated like an afterthought. That's changing. In Q1 2026, dried legume imports, lentils, split peas, chickpeas experienced a 14% import cost increase tied to new tariff schedules affecting Canadian and Indian agricultural goods. Both countries supply the majority of U.S. lentil imports. Buy in 5-pound minimum quantities. Red lentils cook fastest, no soaking required, making them the most practical emergency use format. Store in mason jars or sealed mylar bags with oxygen absorbers. Current pricing window is approximately 3 to 5 months before shelf prices reflect import cost changes. Picture week 3 of living entirely on what's in your pantry right now. The next item is about something more than survival. It's about whether your family actually wants to eat what you've stored. Peanut butter production in the United States is facing a supply pressure it hasn't seen since the 2011 drought, and the 2011 event triggered a 40% retail price spike in under 4 months. Current conditions: peanut crop acreage planted in 2025 was down 8% nationally. Drought conditions persisted across Georgia and Texas through late growing season, and wholesale peanut prices as of February 2026 are already up 17% year over year according to the USDA National Agricultural Statistics Service. Here's the delayed reveal most people miss. Peanut butter isn't just a calorie delivery system, it's a morale food. In legitimate food security research conducted by FEMA and humanitarian aid organizations, familiar, comfort-oriented foods dramatically improve psychological resilience during extended disruption. Peanut butter scores consistently at the top of this category. Buy the plastic jar format, not glass. Lighter, shatterproof, easier storage. Natural peanut butter separates and spoils faster. Commercial formats like Jif or Skippy maintain 2-year stability at room temperature. Stock a minimum of 6 jars per family of 4. This next one will challenge an assumption about healthy eating you've probably carried for years. The assumption: canned fish is the option you choose when you can't afford fresh. Here's what the data actually says. Canned wild-caught salmon contains the same omega-3 fatty acid profile as fresh because it's canned within hours of catch, before oxidation begins. A 2023 NIH comparative study found no statistically significant difference in EPA and DHA content between properly canned and fresh-cooked salmon. Meanwhile, the average retail price of fresh salmon has increased 31% since 2023. Canned salmon is up 9%. This connects back to item 11. Canned goods, broadly, are experiencing tiered price pressure based on protein content. Fish-based cans are in the second tier, meaning they're still price stable, but flagged for adjustment in Q3 2026 distribution contracts. Prioritize sardines first, highest omega-3 per dollar of any canned protein. Then tuna in oil over water, oil-packed, maintains texture and caloric density better in long storage. Buy at least a 24-can mixed case. Current best value, Wild Planet brand sardines, or store brand chunk light tuna in oil. We've been talking about protein and calories. This next one is about something different. It's about the item most emergency preparedness experts say families consistently understock by a factor of 10. The average American family stores approximately 4 to 6 ounces of salt. Emergency preparedness research recommends a minimum of 8 pounds per person per year, not for sodium intake, but for food preservation, water purification support, and fermentation. That gap between what families have and what they actually need is a factor of over 20. Salt itself doesn't expire, ever. Roman legions were partially paid in salt. The word salary derives from the Latin salarium, a sealed container of non-iodized salt stored in a cool environment will remain chemically stable indefinitely. No oxygen absorbers needed. No special storage. It is the only pantry item on this list with a genuinely infinite shelf life. Current pricing for a 25-pound bag of non-iodized canning and pickling salt, under $10. It's one of the most asymmetric preparedness investments available. By non-iodized salt specifically, iodine degrades over time and can impart bitterness. Morton canning and pickling. Salt in the 25-pound bag is the standard. Store in its original paper bag inside a sealed plastic bin to prevent moisture absorption. Forward reference at number 3. There's an item that pairs with salt in a way that extends your food system by months. Keep that in mind. Everything from this point forward carries more weight. These are the items where the supply pressure is most acute. The price trajectory is steepest. And frankly, where the difference between families who acted and families who waited will be most visible by August. And the number one item, I'll give you one more detail without naming it yet. It's an item that in previous major supply disruptions, 2008, 2020, early 2022, disappeared from shelves within 72 hours of news breaking. Not within weeks, within days. That's the category we're going toward. Between 2022 and 2025, the average retail price of olive oil increased 147% globally. That wasn't a headline. It was a slow-motion price event that most families absorbed without realizing they were absorbing it. Here's what's less discussed. The same climatic conditions driving olive oil pressure, drought in Spain, Italy, and Greece, are simultaneously affecting avocado oil supply chains out of Mexico. The two primary premium cooking oil categories are under concurrent pressure for the first time in recorded modern commodity history. According to data from the International Olive Council, global olive oil production in the 2024-2025 season recovered partially from historic lows, but remains 23% below the 10-year average. Prices stabilized in early 2026, but are projected to respike in Q3 as seasonal reserves deplete. Buy refined avocado oil in the largest available format, typically 1 liter or 2 liter containers. Refined avocado oil has a shelf life of 18 to 24 months sealed, compared to 12 to 18 for extra virgin olive oil. Costco's Chosen. Foods brand offers the best current price per ounce ratio. Store away from heat and light. Contrarian challenge incoming. This next one is an item that many preparedness channels ignore because it seems too ordinary. That's exactly why it belongs here. There's a version of this item that lasts 2 years sealed, and a version that goes stale in 3 months. Most families are buying the wrong one. All-purpose flour at retail. The standard paper bag on grocery shelves has a practical shelf life of 6 to 8 months under normal storage conditions. Oxygen, moisture, and light accelerate fat oxidation in the wheat germ, turning the flour bitter and functionally unusable. But here's what changes everything. sealed in mylar with oxygen absorbers. The same flour extends to 10 years of stable storage. The USDA confirmed this in long-term storage studies conducted for emergency preparedness applications. Global wheat prices experienced significant volatility through 2024-2025, driven by Black Sea supply disruptions and Indian export restrictions. As of early 2026, wholesale wheat futures remain elevated 19% above the 2020 baseline, and those costs move downstream to retail flour within 2 to 3 quarters. Buy unbleached all-purpose flour in 5-pound or 10-pound bags. Immediately repackage into mylar bags with 300cc oxygen absorbers, heat seal, and place in food-grade buckets. Label clearly. King Arthur Unbleached. All-purpose is the most consistent quality baseline available nationally. This one and number one together form the most overlooked combination on this entire list. Two ingredients that together give your family the ability to produce a core caloric base indefinitely. Keep that in mind. One thing before we reach the top 3, something most channels covering this topic will never say directly. Stockpiling isn't really about fear. The families who do this most effectively aren't the most anxious ones. They're the most rational ones. Research from the University of Nebraska's Emergency Management Program found that households with 30 or more days of food reserves reported significantly lower anxiety scores during supply disruptions than those with under 7 days, not because nothing bad happened to them, but because they had options. Options change your psychology, and your psychology changes every decision your family makes under pressure. What you're building here isn't a bunker, it's bandwidth. Black beans, kidney beans, pinto beans, navy beans. This category is the closest thing to a complete nutritional system available in dried pantry form. Dried beans provide complex carbohydrates, plant-based protein, soluble fiber, iron, magnesium, and potassium simultaneously. A 2021 meta-analysis published in Nutrients Journal covering 41 studies found regular bean consumption associated with improved glycemic control, reduced LDL cholesterol, and sustained satiety scores. In a food security context, that translates to stable energy, reduced craving cycles, and better sleep under stress. And here's where item 6 connects. Salt is a critical ingredient in the soaking and cooking process that both improves digestibility and significantly extends palatability. These two items together aren't just practical, they're a system. Import tariff data from the USDA's Foreign Agricultural Service shows legume import costs up 14% on Canadian pulse crops since Q4 2025. Domestic production has not meaningfully increased. Current retail pricing represents a pricing window that closes, historically, within 2 to 3 quarters of import cost increases. Buy a variety of dried beans, not just one type. Different beans provide different culinary applications, minimum 10 pounds per adult in the household. Repackage in mylar with oxygen absorbers. Current best value is Goya brand in bulk, or store brand 2-pound bags at under $2.50 each. 2 items left. The next one is something almost every preparedness channel covers, but almost none of them explain the specific format detail that makes the difference between useful and worthless in a real shortage. Archaeologists excavating 3,000-year-old Egyptian tombs have found honey that was still chemically edible, not metaphorically, literally consumed. Honey is the only food known to have an effectively indefinite shelf life when properly sealed, confirmed by food scientists at the National Honey Board and validated repeatedly in archaeological and food chemistry literature. Its low moisture content, natural hydrogen peroxide production, and acidic pH create conditions where bacterial growth is structurally impossible. But here's the format detail most channels miss. Raw, unfiltered honey is significantly more stable than commercial filtered honey. The filtration process removes naturally occurring pollen and propolis compounds that act as additional antimicrobial agents. Filtered honey is more prone to crystallization and moisture absorption under variable humidity conditions. Beyond shelf life, honey is a concentrated caloric source at 64 calories per tablespoon, a natural antimicrobial for wound care in field conditions confirmed in clinical literature, a cough suppressant validated in a 2021 Oxford University study to outperform standard pharmaceutical options, and a powerful morale food, one that carries significant psychological comfort in its flavor familiarity. Buy raw, unfiltered honey in glass jars, never plastic for long-term storage, as plastic is permeable to moisture over time. Minimum 5 pounds per household. If honey crystallizes, place jar in warm water. It returns to liquid state with no nutritional loss. Local raw honey from a farmer's market is ideal. Online options include YS Eco Bee Farms and Crockett Honey Co. Now, the one I've been building towards since the first 15 seconds of this video. Wait, you may be thinking, didn't we already cover cooking oil? No. We covered premium cooking oil. What we haven't discussed is the item that sits at the intersection of caloric density, shelf life, cooking versatility, personal care function, and historical shortage behavior. And that item is refined coconut oil in bulk format. Here's the full evidence stack. In 2020, refined coconut oil was among the first pantry items to disappear from major retailer shelves during the initial COVID disruption, ahead of flour, ahead of rice, ahead of canned goods. Industry analysts at FMI, the Food Industry Association, documented coconut oil as a top 10 early depletion item in 3 consecutive week-over-week tracking reports from March 2020. Within 72 hours of major news events, it was gone. Why? Because it functions as a food and a household product simultaneously. Refined coconut oil is stable at room temperature for 2 to 5 years sealed. It has a high smoke point, 400 degrees, making it suitable for nearly every cooking application. It functions as a skin moisturizer, lip balm base, hair conditioner, and natural antimicrobial treatment. In genuine extended disruption, multi-function items become disproportionately valuable because they solve multiple problems from a single storage unit. In the opening of this video, I told you purchasing managers were quietly reducing reorder quantities. Coconut oil is one of the specific categories in those SKU reduction decisions because it sits at the intersection of food and personal care supply chains, both of which are experiencing simultaneous pressure. The category doesn't make headlines. That's exactly why it makes this list. Buy refined coconut oil, not virgin. Refined has a higher smoke point and neutral flavor, making it more culinarily versatile. 54-ounce containers at Costco under the Luana or Carrington Farms brand offer the best price per ounce nationally. Buy 3 to 5 containers. Store in a cool, stable temperature location. A basement shelf is ideal. At current pricing, you're locking in a 2026 rate on an item that will follow oil commodity pricing upward through mid-year. Here's what this list actually represents when you take it as a whole. 11 items, every one chosen for a specific, documentable reason. Not anxiety, not speculation, not fear-mongering. Supply data, price trajectory, shelf life science, nutritional density per dollar. These are rational decisions made in a rational window before that window closes.